scientific ways of knowing things, there's always like that certain degree where we could be wrong. And an intuition that learns is an intuition that recognizes that.
One shouldn't give 2 points to failure and 1 point to success, because intuition has to learn from both kinds of experiences.
And more so from successes, because for every person who's failed many times and succeeded, there is 1,000 others who failed and never succeeded. So many geniuses, so many artists, so many extraordinary talent. After a particular age, they're lonely because they managed to kick everybody out of their life, one by one.
Sarigamagari, pamagari, now pamagari, sarigamagari, Nisa. The ANH Podcast.
So welcome once again to the ANH Podcast. Today I want to talk to you about a very, very interesting topic. For many, it's a mysterious thing. For many, it is spiritual. For Harini and me as evolution scientists, we look at this topic very differently. And this is about intuition. And also, Harini has been writing a chapter on intuition that learns for our upcoming book. So, Harini, what do you want to talk about intuition today?
It's strange because I've seen a lot of people treat intuition like it's God and treat it like it's end all. Some people believe that they're intuitive people, like they're born as an intuitive person. And there's so many demerits to such strong, powerful frames that people hold on to and believe. What are some things about intuition that just the way people perceive intuition, what are some of the things that you find amusing?
I think it's a very personal thing for me because a lot of people I know actually claim spirituality to kind of put their intuition in a high pedestal because they somehow feel their intuition is God-given. But the faith I come from, the scripture very clearly says, do not lean on your own understanding and in all your ways acknowledge God. It clearly tells people in multiple places that human intuition is useless. In fact, it goes all the way to make a claim that there is a way that seems good unto men, but in the end, it leads to death.
Wow, that's strong.
So when people say, it's a spiritual thing, and that's why I feel like my intuition is going to be always right. I'm like, wait, which spiritual thing? Because, and I have studied more than my faith. I've studied so many scriptures across different faiths, and I have not seen anything that places human intuition at a point where it doesn't need correction or learning. So for me, the whole idea that we as humans have for a long time tried to feel like we are invincible is a lie. And the whole idea that your unconscious can learn, which we discussed in the previous podcast, actually the building blocks to the idea that your intuition can learn. And a lot of times intuitions can be really reliable, and a lot of times intuitions are mere guesses. They're more accurate guesses than what you may make consciously, but they're mere guesses. And the whole...
So can we say that intuition
Yeah.
is either a good guess, like when you have an intuition, it's either a very good guess or a good guess or a bad guess?
It's a good guess or a bad guess, but I would go a little more narrower because most times the intuitions are good guesses. A guess can be conscious and a guess can also be unconscious. In the previous podcast, we spoke about how our neurology has like a feedback mechanism where one channel is a feedback to another. So our human body is incredibly designed. It's so incredibly designed that a lot of times when an intuition comes out, it's actually multi-validated by various systems in our body. There's the left brain, the right brain, there are different hemispheres working, there are different ways in which they pattern that data across time. And so it's coming from a feedback and some validated experience. So most times intuitions are more accurate. So the problem with it is that what about the 1%? What about the 2%? What about the 5% of times when it's not accurate? And as humans, we have the ability to make many things that we believe to come true. So especially when you have intuitions about certain things, you may make that actually the reality when that reality is suboptimal than what was actually possible. So that's the danger. So it's not good guess versus bad guess, because it's not 50-50, and it's not a conscious guess. Most times intuition is an unconscious process, and it's also multi validated unconscious process. That data is different parts of your brain coming to the same conclusion, and then finally it shows up as intuition. But think about a wife who suspects her husband, and most times they're right, because most times a husband is having an affair with somebody, and the husband goes and changes the clothes, takes off the smell, they maybe shower, but maybe there's that little piece of hair that is left somewhere, maybe in the shoe. Now the wife may not consciously notice it, but she can unconsciously, because unconsciously we're observing a lot of data. Or maybe there's no hair left, but maybe this man is more relaxed unusually, so his mannerisms are different. And also, as humans, we mirror people. Maybe he is exhibiting some mannerisms of the girl he was spending time with. So now the wife may not be able to exactly say, this is why I know that you're having an affair with someone, but many of her senses are processing, and from more than one channel, from smell, from visual, from auditory, and she's concluding in multiple ways. And finally, when her unconscious conclusions tally, it comes out as an intuition. Yet, how many times have women got it absolutely wrong? How many times have families broken because the girl thinks that the husband is cheating on someone while he's not? So almost every time they're right, but the key word is almost. So intuition is highly, highly accurate most times, and it's coming from very complex calculations. One of the things that I read about is when someone lost a ring, like a wedding ring, he was able to get her to go into a nice altered state where her unconscious was able to scan memories. And she said it must be in the tank. And what had happened was the unconscious was able to recollect that moment when she heard a sound of a ring fall down and go through the drain in her house. And just imagine you're on shower, how minute that sound is. But that's the degree of sensory information that our human neurology is
Capable of storing.
And not just storing, but in a lightning speed, processing all of that and coming to conclusions. And
From a very specific state of mind.
from a very specific state of mind. And also when people sleep, for example, the brain is processing that. So imagine this is just one way to arrive at that information. Maybe she felt also the reflections of the light when it. So there are multiple processes, multiple channels to which it's computing that data. So intuition is getting also validated by multiple processes in the brain coming to the same conclusion. That's why they're so powerful. That's why you can intuitively know things you can otherwise analytically and consciously not know. Yet, so many times, the intuition is incorrect. It just reminds me of, how many people have been thrown into prison on circumstantial evidences where it appears like absolutely there is no doubt that they did the crime. And then many years later, DNA testing comes out and they found out those people were not guilty. How many people were found to be guilty with DNA testing, and later they found out that DNA testing is not as reliable as they thought? And this is a common pattern. Like, even when you have scientific ways of knowing things, there's always like that certain degree where we could be wrong. And an intuition that learns is an intuition that recognizes that although it's coming from such like a deep space, it still could make mistakes. So you're using the external consequences and outcomes to actually learn so that your intuition becomes stronger and stronger. Because if you think about it, a lot of intuition is actually contextual, is very, very, very contextual. Think about someone who's a stock trader and they're trading and they have a certain intuition of when the market is going to go up, when the market is going to go down. And let's say if they're doing a daily trading, intraday trading, they have an intuition of, okay, now it's going to go up, it's going to go down. Now you take a highly intuitive coach or you take a highly intuitive, pilot, you put them in front of a trading machine. Their intuition is not going to be relevant over there. Now, there's skill, there's intuition. So obviously they may not have the skill, but a lot of times the traders are working on intuition. A lot of investors who meet people, they work on intuition. They meet an entrepreneur and they intuitively know whether this entrepreneur is going to be consistent, is going to be able to change fast enough, is going to be able to have the right team members. And these are intuitive decisions that they're doing. Now, you can't trade places. There was some evidence that the skill and data gathered over life experiences influence how intuitive we are. And that means it is learned.
So the learning piece looks like it's most important, the validation part, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when people think that they're intuitive, it's possible that they're remembering all of the times when they made an intuitive guess and they were right. And now they're giving themselves like multiple brownie points, and that happens a second time, that happens a third time. Now it's possible that the fourth time they're guessing and it's inaccurate, but when they believe that they're an intuitive person, it's almost like their unconscious just deletes that reference.
Yes.
And they go about the next time and the next time, the next time. And so it could be that they're getting it right, like you said, most of the time. But the danger is also when they're not getting it right and they don't know. But if they're getting it wrong and they know that I intuitively felt this way, but the outcome didn't turn out to be like that, if they're able to learn from that experience, then I think the neurology gets a new piece of information instead of you predicted something but it didn't turn out that way. So it's important that the neurology recognizes, the person recognizes that it didn't turn out right. So what's the difference between their hypothesis versus the outcome? What are some news of difference that they can grasp right now and make finer distinction in that intuition? People who are intuitive and who are able to rely on their intuition more often than not are the kinds who have this validation piece very well done in their neurology, rather than, like just omit or forget or come up with excuses for it didn't work, or okay, I was wrong because, and then they'll come up with like a justification or an excuse for why their intuition was wrong. And most of the time that it may not even be a valuable learning, the kind of excuses people come up with for why something didn't work. The important thing is to recognize that it didn't work
And just
come
leave
up
it there.
exactly.
Because then your unconscious goes and figures out actually what are the things.
Like it could not be, it may not be as simple as like this one reason. It could be like myriad reasons that's going on at a deeper level, and that's for the unconscious to figure out as it's
So to just
sleeping.
give examples to the audience, a guy is interested in a girl and she doesn't like him. Now maybe if he's not from a wealthy background, it's easy for him to say because girls only like boys with money. Or if he's short, oh, because I'm short. Now those may be shallow on
Conclusions.
the surface conclusions compared to what was really going on. And as Harini said, it's not a single thing, it's a set of things. Now, this could be about closing a deal. This could be about why a business is taking off, not taking off. Often you go and help businesses that are really struggling, and they say, "Oh, we know the reason why we're not able to grow." And I ask them, "If you know that, by now you should have fixed it." And when they try to tell me everything that they think they know, I'm like, if what you know is accurate then and your conclusions are accurate, you'd have fixed it by now. So what is it that you don't know that you haven't been able to fix? So I always look at intuitions and conclusions as if it isn't actionable and if you can't change that situation, then it's probably an incorrect and inadequate conclusion. Because most times if you can conclude and exactly know what is going on, you probably can change it, except in terms of human behaviors where you need installations and other things, especially in business setup. Often if you actually know what is the challenge, you would be able to change it. You should be able to. At least that's what we've noticed from our past experiences. When we help businesses double, triple, or even 10x some of their incomes, the challenge that the business thinks that they have as a group, and sometimes this intuition can be a collective thing too. Like, someone could like absolutely be sure they may be completely solving a wrong problem.
And when they're sitting together as a group
Yeah.
of, let's say, people who are very, very deep into that particular business or have been doing it for a long time, it's interesting how different people have different intuitions. they have a different point each. And even though one may be absolutely convinced that this is it and this is how it should be, when another person brings out a completely different perspective, it's like as if that was like just missing from your map for like a while. And then when you process it from that perspective, it's like your intuitive feel about the same situation could change, right?
Yes. As long as you're open to new information. So, one of the things that you could use to know if you have an intuition that is learning is if things that you have been absolutely sure about changed for you and you became, oh, I was sure about that, but now when I look at it from this perspective, I think I have a different feeling right now.
Isn't the likelihood of that far lesser, Anu? Because I've seen so many people who get locked in a circular belief system.
Yeah.
So, do you want to tell us a little more about circular belief systems?
So going back to the example of the guy who feels like this girl doesn't like me because I don't have money. Now he's likely to go and try being liked by five more girls. And he's going to do the things because he doesn't have money or maybe because he's short or whatever is the reason that he's come up with. He's going to do the exact same set of behaviors that's going to make them treat him badly. So, as soon as he's about to go and approach or talk to a girl that he likes, in his head, he's going to think, okay, she's going to reject me. I remember when I was in London, I was treated like an absolute delight. The Britishers there, the foreigners in that land, and everybody, when they heard that I was from India, and whatever we were talking, they got even more excited because they're like, oh, India. And I come back to India and I met a friend of mine and he was talking to me about his experience in the UK and he was talking about how he was treated as a second class citizen. And I was like, what are you saying, man? Like, I had like the best time of my life. Like, what are you saying? It so happened that there was another time when I was in the UK and he also happened to be there. And I noticed what was going on is that, when he was talking to people in that country, he had a negative attitude. Like, even before he talked to them, in his head, he would curse them. He'd be like, okay, you useless guy, or some rubbish about, I know you don't like me, but we need to have this conversation. So that's his internal voice.
And it's so unconscious that he may not even be aware
Yeah,
of
it's
it.
so fast, it's so unconscious. I asked him, hey, what's that look? I'm going to have to talk to that useless guy. So it's so unconscious. That's the attitude. So when he does that, he's creating a vibe. And when people look at it and he talks to them again, it may be a new person, but they're going to treat him badly, not because he's Indian, because he created a particular vibe based on his past experiences. And he had a strong belief that they're going to treat him badly, and he made it true. So now what happens is that invalid belief gets reinstated for him. So that's a circular belief system. So a lot of times the things that you believe in, you kind of enforce it. And with intuition, it's the degree of that happening is even higher.
So it's like you believe something so strongly, and conviction in your belief gets certain micro patterns in you activated.
Yeah.
In a way that it's kind of becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
It's like there's no chance to validate if there can be a different outcome because you're so strong about believing a certain thing. It's like your behavior and responses tend to be a particular way that you're anyway going to get that kind of response that you imagine that you would get. Now, that isn't an example of accurate intuition. That's just an example of a limitation that a person might have, where they get locked in what we're calling a circular belief system. Is like, I believe this, and because I believe this, there's a particular way in which I'm acting, there's a particular way in which unknowingly there's certain micro patterns, and that is going to produce a particular response that I'm predicting is going to produce anyway. And the person tends to get so locked that they rarely have delightful experiences outside of the kind that they imagine. Now, this could be true, whether it's on the positive side or the negative side, because circular belief systems could happen either way. Like, there's some people who just believe the world is a wonderful place, it's a safe place, there's nothing ever wrong with the world, and everybody is inherently a beautiful person. And but there's somebody else that could just be thinking that the world is extremely unsafe.
When people feel like, everybody is good and inherently everything is good, they kind of ignore all the evidence the opposite until
True.
their house and their land and everything is taken away from them. But then,
God forbid.
yeah, I mean, by
Yeah.
then it's too late. I mean,
True.
I won't be surprised, if a group of people, a society of people think that way, that
Yeah.
their land and their nation is taken away from them. I mean, if you
It's
look at
happened in history time and
if you look
again.
at history and you look at the number of times civilizations have been wiped out,
Yeah.
they were just all assuming that people are generally good.
Wow. So that kind of also means that people probably mirror intuitions. Could that be going on when you look at it civilization
At a
level?
civilization level, what happens is, like, say, someone influential has a belief like that, then their writing, then their song, then their movies that they create, and all of that, the stories that they tell, all of them translates into culture. So you start having specific words that start shaping that kind of thinking. And after a while, you're not exposed to the other sort of literature and you don't know that these kind of things have happened in the past. So now the person becomes naive. They become so naive that they think, or if their exposure is only to amongst themselves and they don't know what happens outside. It's a very, 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 very naive thing. You can date back almost 1,000 years and you can see how many civilizations have been wiped out because they just thought everyone has good intention. So,
Right.
and the opposite of that is, people with circular belief. So for me, what is interesting is when they have a belief system like that, the danger signs are shown, the warning signs are shown, they ignore it. And that's the danger with
That's
the
so
circular
dangerous.
belief system until they're wiped out. And the opposite
It's
is
like
also,
warning number one, but nope, they're blind to it, and warning number two, and they're still blind to it, and then it's just too late. It's like the setup, the design of a circular belief system itself is like they almost unable to see the exceptions. A good way for people to build a better intuition than they may already have is to just be open to possibilities, open to the possibility that they could be wrong, open
that their
and curious,
intuition
right? Because I've seen,
can be
because
wrong.
one of the
Yeah.
things that most geniuses have, and when I'm saying genius, we're referring to a very high standard.
Yeah.
We're not just referring to a functional expert who's doing one thing extraordinarily
Yeah.
well,
Outliers who are extraordinary, there's none like them in
where
their
they can
area.
cross map, they have systemic thinking.
And the sad part is they've been intuitive all their life, that when they grow old and they stop learning, they start intuitively assumptions about people that they're interacting with, especially the next and the next generation. And so they lose out on relationships and they feel extremely lonely. The saddest part of not having an intuition that learns, and especially it affects geniuses more than regular people, because if you're very intuitive and you've gotten to the top, you have learned to do that trusting your intuition. And suddenly you're dealing with a new breed of people. Their actions may not mean the same things that you earlier understood to mean. And because you have always relied on your intuitions, you certainly make a conclusion that this person is a liar or a cheater or a bad person or a bad intent or whatever it is. And slowly they start weeding out people from their life. And so many geniuses, so many artists, so many extraordinary talent, after a particular age, they're lonely because they manage to kick everybody out of their life one by one. And sometimes the intensity is so strong that there's no communication channel for another person to help them see it differently. Or maybe they're not in the right state because they came to the conclusion and it suddenly hurt them so much. So now they're not able to process new information. And if they were not a genius, if they didn't have that kind of life experience, if they didn't rely on their intuition only all their life, probably, when something doesn't work well, they might have had the patience to talk to that person or to look at it differently, to think through it before they got hurt. When the intuitions were reliable all along and suddenly they're dealing with a new kind of people, or even in their own family, the people they have dealt with, they're changing every 10 years. So some things that they used to say behave earlier may not be the way they behave now. It doesn't mean that their intuition or their respect or how much they value you has changed. Ability to understand deeper, more deeper, what a person really intends. not only based on your historic reference of how they have been dealing with you is so important. And
So that's why ongoing learning and ongoing updation of the intuition is very important. So it's like, so intuition itself is something that gets formed
yeah.
when there are numerous data points that are coming your way. And especially when you're working with, or when you're interning with someone who's very experienced, or you're just working with someone who's very experienced doing that particular thing for a very long time, they're able to take intuitive actions and decisions, and they've done it over a period of time. They've learned from their mistakes as well. Not fair in the world today is this narrative about, and this happens even like the most celebrated celebrities talk so much about failure is the biggest teacher, and it's almost like they're making it romantic to fail, and saying that you learn more from your failure than from your successes. But I think that one shouldn't give 2 points to failure and 1 point to success, because intuition has to learn from both kinds of
And more so
experiences.
from successes, because for every person who's failed many times and succeeded, there is 1,000 others who failed and never succeeded. So if I give you a working model of a watch, it's easy for you to reverse engineer. But if I give you 1,000 models that didn't work, then you're not going to learn.
Yeah.
You're going to learn why it is not working, but you may not necessarily learn what makes it actually work. When Thomas Edison actually invented the light bulb, he did fail over 1,000 times. And I wouldn't think of it as failure. In fact, I would think about it as a failed attempt.
Iterative attempts,
Yeah,
like,
but what they don't tell you in those failed attempts is that there was a significant win in each attempt. Like in one,
absolutely.
he recognizes, oh, this can produce light, but it can't sustain for a long time
So it's wrong to label it
as a
as a
failure.
failure, right?
It's a failed attempt with actually a win, a small win.
So I'm going to use that learning
Yes.
and apply the same thing in a slightly different setup to see what kind of an outcome that produces. I think that's another important approach and strategy people need to have to evolve the intuition, rather than bucketing it as, failure or.
If you have a failed attempt, it doesn't mean your next attempt is going to succeed. So you may be one attempt away or you may be 1,000 attempts away. But the moment you have one successful attempt, then you know that the next attempt can be better because you understand why it was successful. I mean, when Elon Musk kind of actually blew up a rocket, and a lot of people don't understand that that was the outcome. So they wanted certain data points. And in fact, it was not even a failed attempt. A lot of people reported it as, the rocket just blew up. They had to make the rocket succeed above what it had until then. And they know that after that point, it is going to explode, but they wanted that data. So even in what looks like a failed attempt, there is an incremental progress. And then you study that, because then that data is invaluable. That knowledge is invaluable. There are so many things that if I want to, let's say, construct the pyramids like they are in Egypt, and then I fail 1,000 times, like, by taking pebbles from my house and trying to construct, oh, they fall down. I take sand and it falls down. Yes, you do learn that you can't construct a pyramid with sand or pebbles. But does that get you closer to the knowledge of how do you build a pyramid? Not at all. So you do learn from your failure, but it's infinitely more when you have one successful attempt over 100 times of failure.
And it's important to learn from both.
It's important to learn from both. In fact, I think there's an old saying that says, a fool never learns, and a simple person, an average, normal person, would learn from their own mistakes, and the wise would learn from other people's mistakes. And I think with modeling excellence, we can take it a step further and we can say the extraordinary, they learn also from other people's success.
Very important.
Yeah.
Oversimplifying what got them there. Mistakes that people make is they often asking the ones who made it, oh, how did you make it? Now you tell me, how is it possible to explain how did you make it and be accurate about it? Because I've seen that most geniuses don't know how they do what they do. They just know they do it. They just know they could be operating from an intuitive space. They've been doing it for so long, it's become innate. But most people don't have the skill of decoding how they did what they did. So most often their description of how they do what they do is
They can't
very
even decode it
different.
for themselves. Forget decoding it for someone else.
But then
Most geniuses, they are not on demand. Some people have to take a vacation to go back and get their creativity back. Yeah.
but then when you put
and
some
this
of these
and this
geniuses on the
and they
spot.
say, oh, I was not in the flow. And I'm not talking about like your local players. I'm talking about really people at the top. They say, oh, on that day I was not in the zone, I was not in that creative space. So a lot of these people, they can't decode it for themselves. They themselves, to help themselves, they can't get back to it again. So for a lot of people, it's just dependent on certain triggers, external, internal, that come together, and then boom, they are there. And yet, when you put them on the spot, they simplify it. Oh, just believe in yourself, or
Believe in
just trust in yourself,
yourself,
or
work really hard. I mean, who is that not true for, right? Because that has to be true for everybody.
so.
Now,
How is
just
all of this connected to intuition?
think about it. If you take the advice such as believe in yourself
Yeah.
and try to make it your own, now that's good because of the kind of intuition that that person has developed over time
But
with
isn't
all
isn't,
of the
isn't
trial and
believe in
error and
yourself like
everything
a
else.
in like a good thing to believe in anyway?
It's like when I contextualize it
Like I
to.
won't believe in myself to build a spacecraft. So
But that's not the kind of contextualization
yeah.
that happens when they listen to advice from a genius. Because when they're listening to somebody who's made it, and when they say, oh, believe in yourself, work hard, celebrate your failures, and you learn more from your failures than successes. Now, you've just managed to give them three pieces of advice that sounds like it's the universal truth, but the way that person contextualizes it to themselves, because I mean, you don't always have control over who is listening to that piece of information. Now you could be talking to somebody for whom those three pieces of advice, the way they would contextualize it, could just mess up their intuition even more, don't you think?
It does.
So that's how I think it's connected to
And
intuition.
I think in a lot of consultations I've noticed people trying to solve challenges that they have tried solving for years, and they're probably not equipped to solve it. So instead of asking the question, okay, what do I need to do differently? Who do I need here to help me handle this differently? They go back to slogans like, I trust myself, I believe myself, I'll figure it out. And a lot of time people waste 10, 20, 30 years. So I feel like as much as you believe in your abilities to produce certain outcomes, you also need to know your inadequacies so you can get help, you can
Yeah.
get support. And I think a lot of people who talk about their life from rags to riches, they conveniently fail to mention all the people who supported them
So true.
to actually get them from where they are, to where they have become. In a lot of cases, people who gave them shelter, the people who gave them the money for the first experiment, the attempt, the breakthrough, and all the nurturing that goes in. So, more and more, we have to realize that we live in an interconnected world. And it's not just about what you do, it's about you doing it at the right time, in front of the right audience, for the right target group and the right reasons, in a right setting. And there's so many things that have to just all work together for something to really work and really excel. And so it's not just yourself. There's a whole set of things that are interconnected. And anyone who's made it successful, who's made it big, has used resources outside of their own.
And I think it's important for them to acknowledge that as well, because, again, going by the narrative of the presentation, it's always, oh, I was abandoned, and then this person closed the door on me, and then it's like the world just shut down and there was absolutely no help. And that's the kind of story. I mean, it's like the viral format that's just been spun over and over and over again, which is kind of spreading a misconception, because that's not how it works. Even if it looks like all odds are against you, if a person has actually made it, it's like so many things have come together to actually make that happen. And paying attention to both and recognizing the importance of accuracy over what just sounds more sellable, I think that also makes a difference in training one's own intuition.
Yeah, it's about being honest, because do you want to be honest to yourself, or do you want to be nice to yourself? They're two different things. And
Very true.
certain things might make you feel good, but certain things will actually build you up. And I think if you really want an intuition that learns, you want to be able to not be bothered by the times when you got it not so right, and be really excited about the other times when you got it right. And I think that is the key to having an intuition that really learns. So if a person were to look at their life and think about how many times are there things that I believed in strongly, that I intuitively felt, and later discovered that was different from what I thought it was. And if you can spend like 5 minutes and find at least 10 things, you probably have an intuition that is learning. The moment someone stops being a good learner, especially at the level of intuition, so you can be a learner at the level of skill, you can be a learner at the level of information, you can be a learner at the level of process, and you can also be a learner at the level of capabilities, and then you can be a good learner at the level of intuition. The moment someone stops being a learner at the level of intuition, they stop that feedback loop, then they're opening doors for loneliness, big blunders. And I just think about that book that I read long time ago. It's a fiction, but still a very moving one. I think it's by Jeffrey Archer. It goes, not a penny less, not a penny more. And this guy uses his knowledge on stock trading to become really wealthy. And before he becomes wealthy, he's walking through the road and he puts his hand in his pocket and he looks at, I think, something that he wants from the shop, and he counts how many pennies he has. I think it was a jacket. And he counts how many pennies he has. And then, he's now wealthy, he has everything. And then because he's grown his money using stock, now another opportunity comes for him to really multiply what he has. And he invests everything he has into it, and everything crashes. And I don't know if someone read it to me, or I read it myself, but it was a long time ago. And the story ends where he is walking again by the same shop, and it's the same jacket, and he's counting the pennies, and it's the same pennies that he had when he initially passed by that road. Since the book was very emotional, it's just a reminder that there are times when your intuition stops learning, that a person could lose everything they thought they have: relationships, money, business, empires, and all can come dwindling down. It can take wings and fly in a moment. And I think that is why the risk of a circular belief system and locking your intuition from further learning is far more for people who are successful, for people who are good at what they do, for people who are outliers, and for people who have made it at the top, than it is for people who are still getting there. At least the people who are still getting there are ever going to be getting there without an intuition that learns. But the people who have already crossed the level, for them, the downfall can be really, 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 really
So one
big.
can
Yeah.
never take it for granted that if you've made it, then it's just going to be there.
Yeah.
Right? Intuition can regress.
Yeah.
And when intuition regresses,
Yeah.
these are some of the dangers. So I know, how can someone avoid that kind of a pitfall? Or like you said, because nobody wants to be lonely, nobody wants to fall.
I think the
But
emotional capabilities, outliers and geniuses have to really focus on their emotional capabilities, because you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to have a feeling of anger, revenge. And there are different ways in which revenge slips in. Because if you go and ask an average person, you say, "Hey, do you like revenge?" They would say, "No, I don't want to have revenge. I don't have revenge." That's what they would say. But the way it sneaks in, the back door through which it enters, is justice. They feel like, "No, but I want to teach him a lesson because he shouldn't do it for someone else." Or they would say, "No, but you know what? This is going to help him. And so I have to teach him so he can be a better person." So they come up with a variety of backdoor entries to hold on to a particular feeling. And then the outcome is the same as revenge. So a lot of people, especially good people, they don't want to do revenge. They don't want to be hurt. But they have some backdoor open that allows these things to come, stay, and really like ruin and torture their life. And these are capabilities that you can build, that for most people you can notice it. Sometimes it's under the radar. And I always talk about, if an angry man breaks something in the house, you know that he's angry. But what if he's angry differently? What if he doesn't show it in his face or his voice? Just it triggers him. It still comes in the way of quality conversation, quality thinking. And there are so many back doors that are so under the radar. So I really think what geniuses and outliers really require is, as early as possible, develop superior capabilities for innate emotional capabilities. The ability to like disconnect from something that's hurtful, from something that is can be lonely, and a capability that we call as triple perceptual position, where you could kind of look at the same situation from the neurology of different people, like almost like not literally but almost literally. You kind of take on their way of thinking, their filters, and you're seeing through it. So I think these are superior capabilities that is good to develop, because nobody wants an intuition that doesn't learn. And I don't think we have a on off switch. It's not like geniuses go and, okay, my intuition is perfect, turn off. That's not what they do. They don't go and turn off the intuition that learns. They don't do that. They get hurt. They get lonely. They get revengeful. Now the biochemistry is messed up, because we have to understand that a lot of our learning that happens in the brain is dependent on the quality of the chemicals in the brain. There is, I know someone who calls it the brain juice. And you have good brain juice, your brain has better ability to learn. If it's bad brain juice, then it's going to learn wrong things, incorrect, inaccurate conclusions. Some of these backdoors and the emotions that we spoke about, they create bad brain juice. So the person is not necessarily understanding reality. They're understanding a very different reality from what is happening. And this is, we're not talking about people who are schizophrenic, or we're not talking about that. We're talking about normal people. We're talking about normal people. We're talking about the fact that normal people have so much misunderstanding on a daily basis, and we don't even know that we misunderstand each other, because we only know it when it becomes a fight. We only know it when there's a confrontation. But normal people have so much misunderstanding. They misunderstand each other so very often. It's a known challenge in communication. We still can make way and adjust and understand each other enough that we can make progress. But when people are hurt, lonely, revengeful, all the backup mechanisms are like shut down. So now you have an intuition that's locked. And any belief they form becomes a circular belief. And they engage in behaviors that get more of the response from that person. So it's not like telling somebody, hey, have an intuition that learns, is not going to help them. It's not like they're going and having an on off switch and, oh, now let's turn it on. It's not going to work. You need to figure out what are the inhibitors. Drugs, that's another thing. So we have these emotions, and then creativity, need for creativity, taking drugs for creativity or taking pain for creativity. A lot of others think I have to be in pain if I can produce a wonderful art. Oh, I want to express pain. Great. At what cost? And can you not find other ways to bring out your creativity? And surprisingly, a lot of people cannot, who are stuck in that loop. They cannot. Unbelievable how many musicians, great musicians, become addicted to alcohol, addicted to drugs, and they hate their life for it. They try to kill themselves. And this is without exception in every country in the world, because they want that creativity. They're addicted to it, and they know either drugs or they know pain. And so they keep and deeply think about their partner or spouse who left them, or
That explains
all
how
the
there's
worries.
like millions of songs on heartbreak and yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, sometime back when I was actually trying to find inspirational songs to sing, like really nice songs, no, inspirational songs that don't sound like rhymes,
Yeah.
inspiration songs that are like very deep in music.
Yeah.
There's actually not that many, but there's, or rather, at least the stuff that's depressing just totally outnumbers the good songs that have like nice meaning, inspirational
I
meaning,
think
that
music is
evokes
warfare.
creativity.
When I had a group of friends who were like druggies and all the time doing drugs, not friends really, just people I knew who came and visited people I know. One of the things they would come and say is, hey, why don't you listen to this music with us? And their thing is just music, it's just music. But something about you know, those songs would just like, I would just go in and I feel so horrible. Now I like the beat, but, and I can't even hear what they're saying, but I feel so weird about it and I would leave that place. And at that time, I didn't know about installations. And the reason now, when I think back, is I got saved from drugs because I didn't do that kind of music. Now, if I heard that music with them, I'm going to do the things that the songs install in you to do. It teaches you to look at life a particular way. It teaches you to look at relationships a particular way. And then drugs is the natural outcome of that. If you want me to get people to do drugs, which I'm not going to do, and catching me to help people do that is like the most silliest thing to do, because there are people who do it already. You don't even need so much installation skills. You just have to go and look at what a drug is listening to. If you were to ask some installation expert, what are the top 50 songs, if people heard, they would become drug addicts. And if you are running a pub that makes money by illegally selling drugs, and you play those 50 songs, and you could be sure that a percentage of population who's coming to that pub will get into drugs. Is that predictable? So music has that effect because it's unconscious. You're conscious about the beats, you're conscious about the rhythm, you're conscious about all of the things that are going on. But what you're not conscious about is, what does that words in it do to you when it goes through your subconscious. And when you look at some of the lyrics, it's unbelievably dangerous. I think I saw one horror film. I don't even know why I saw it. I don't like horror films so much. But I saw a horror film. I think it said, it was, the horror film's name was Ring or something, where, the closing scene. So it's like you watch a particular tape, and then the person will get a call after a few days or something like that, and then they're supposed to send that tape to somebody else, or something bad will happen to them. I think that's the storyline. And then I think I just remember that closing dialogue in that movie where it goes like, they talk about films or something, saying that the purpose of journalism, or I don't know what they say, is to take the misery of one person and make it the misery of many
What a
others.
lousy installation.
Yeah, and when you think about it, that's what sad songs do.
Yeah.
Artists go into that space where they're deeply miserable, and in one way they think they're finding healing by singing that out. So there are songs where artists are actually, from that miserable space, they're healing themselves by the tune, by the words. So for a lot of people who hear that song, they actually experience healing.
For
So
that moment.
for that moment, although it came from a low space, it at least has a positive effect that it brings the person out. But then there are so many other songs where they want to dwell in that pain, they want to remain in that pain. And now that becomes art, that becomes music. And you look at drug addiction groups, this is the prevailing type of art form. And when people bond together on pain, there's a big risk that they're going to multiply the pain instead of healing each other. There are groups where, people with pain come together and they heal each other. But we have to be very careful because there's a big chance that they multiply the pain for each other. So with music, I think you have to be extremely, extremely careful
I mean, just
what is
lack
possible.
of state choice,
Yeah.
lack of emotional capabilities,
Yeah.
or having some limitations such as getting hurt like that,
Yeah.
or guilt, and all of these things which we feel are like, huh, like everybody has that, but it can really bite. And it can.
Especially for outliers, because they're very intense people. So now they're not getting angry; they're getting angry. Yeah,
And all of this has a direct impact on their intuition,
yeah,
their ability to be right, their ability to rely on their intuition. I think it's so important, and this is such an eye opener, or rather to just wake up to the fact that don't take your emotional health for granted, and that it's important to continue to improve, enhance, overcome limitations, and get to a better space there
and
as
and
well.
and just for the audience, when we talk about emotional health, we're not talking about feeling good. We're talking about the capability to feel good when things are not well. When there's pressure, do you feel stress? When someone speaks rudely,
Capability to feel good yet be aware. I mean, you're not
yeah.
like oblivious to
Yeah,
what's happening, but
yeah. You're not
still.
like, hi, oh, I don't know what's happening. I don't care. I'm happy. It's not that. It's not like having that smile. It's just being resourceful. Like someone hurt you, you're looking at, okay, how do I deal with this from like a less painful state? That kind of capabilities. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're calling it a capability because the difference between a technique and a capability is a technique that's something you have to do to get the outcome. And a capability is where it happens by itself internally. And you don't have to do a technique. So you know it's a capability when you didn't have to do a technique, a procedure to automatically feel differently. And that's when it's a capability.
Obviously, there's a set of intuition that we've developed with people, meeting people, and we've also created the setup for so much validation. In fact, a lot of people ask, how is it that you are able to do this, or what makes you uniquely qualified to have created excellence installation technology when there are so many veterans in the world who haven't? How is it that you have a solution to one of the biggest plagues in the world today, which is not having visibility into the gap between capabilities and intentions that people may have, or capabilities and the actual potential that people may have? Because we do believe that everybody can create a legacy, but most people don't, because there's such a big gap between their capabilities and what they can do. We're designing their capability development. We're able to see what the trajectory is like in the way they're going right now. If you develop certain capabilities for them, where will that land? And we're making that guess. And then we're doing what we're doing. And then we're checking what happens, like by actually measuring outcomes. And then, okay, now that we've gotten a real measurement of where they are, now we're doing the next set of capability development, because we foresee that this capability development will allow this person to create these kind of life experiences, and this is where they could get in their life. And now we've not done this for one person or two person or three persons, we've done this for thousands of people, and that's how we've come up with this model, uh, uh, which, I mean, I wouldn't even say it's a model, because it's pretty much an intuition. And fortunately, now we've been able to help other people develop this
Intuition.
intuition.
Yeah, I think of all intuitions, the intuition that I love is the predictive intelligence of how do you create great life outcomes by the minimal set of capabilities that you need to add to a person in addition to what they already have.
And I think it's
Because,
worth studying this, because
yeah.
it gives you the incredible power to know for yourselves in your own life and the lives that you're responsible for. Like, because parents are always, at least in the initial years of their parenting their children, they're helping make decisions, and everybody has good intentions, but knowing the gap between those intentions that you have versus the capability development, and actually orchestrated and having the intuition there going up, means that you're literally designing trajectories of many, many lives, right?
Most people are trying to anyway. It's just that we may not recognize that we are always influencing people around us. Sometimes with good intentions, trying to evolve people around us. But the predictive intelligence quotient can be of varying degree based on your life experience. And if you have higher degree of predictive intelligence, especially with evolving people,
So when you're saying predictive intelligence, you mean the
predictive intelligence for evolving people,
the intelligence of
human predictive intelligence.
in the intelligence of knowing how to predict capabilities for
Yeah,
people.
yeah, predict capabilities and also the life experiences that they will be able to have with certain capabilities that will evolve them. So it's like you're predicting capabilities and the life outcomes. And with those life outcomes, the experiences that they will have and what kind of evolution it'll bring in that person. So predicting that trajectory shift is so wonderful because you might just have one story, one example, one small mindset shift for that person, but it might change their entire trajectory. So imagine if you were, going into a farm and they're like the most amazing fruits and beautiful fruits and of all kinds. And as you walk along, just wherever you walk, in that part alone, the trees that are there bear better fruits. They're more they're more tastier, they're more beautiful, they're more richer. And imagine now, these are not trees that are bearing fruits, these are human beings who are creating big impact in the world. That's what it really means when you have great degree of predictive intelligence and evolving people. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you would have impacted the trajectories of people, be impact creators, and maybe even extend their impactful life.
So it's like a specialized intuition.
It's a very specialized
So there's
intuition.
common sense,
Yeah.
there's contextual intuition,
Yeah.
and there's continuing intuition of all of this kind that evolves with
Yes.
learning and validation and creating a setup where you're open and learning and humble, learning from a variety of different experiences.
And then there's the
And there's,
intuition of an evolution artist.
which is, I think, one of the most special forms of
Yeah.
intuition that.
And I hope, as the viewer of this podcast, that you feel and recognize in the variety of different ways in which your predictive intelligence, especially for evolving your life and the people that you love about, has been enriched and enhancing. And as you continue to watch more of these episodes and even maybe watch some of them again and again, we are curious to know from you, in how many variety of ways have you noticed already the effect of these episodes on your intuition. And we'll see you soon again in the next episode.
The ANH Podcast.